Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoteric and a continuing series on the MiSTer FPGA DE-10 Nano project, and today we have the PlayStation 1 core preliminary setup guide because you guys have been asking for this, and I feel like the core is to the point where I can teach most of you, even if you're not tech savvy, how to take your MiSTer and make it into a PlayStation 1. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and that notification bell definitely helps us out. If you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link in the description as well. But getting this core set up is not very difficult at this point in time, and that's why I waited a bit to get it ready for you guys, because when I was previewing this, the setup was relatively a little bit more complicated. But if you go onto the GitHub for this, and I will leave a link in the description below, you'll see all the different features that the core has, but there's a few things that we need to take care of first. We need a BIOS for this to run. Without a BIOS, this PlayStation 1 core will not boot up. Now I can't tell you where to find the BIOS, but it's pretty damn easy. If you can use Google, you're going to find it. And what we need to do is put that BIOS into a folder called PSX. It will not be on your MiSTer. Under Games, create a new folder called PSX, and you're going to pop that BIOS file in there, and you're going to rename it to boot.rom. Make sure you've renamed it. Now, where does the core come from? I'll leave a link to the MiSTer Discord below. In Unstable Nightly Builds, you're going to see the latest build for the PlayStation core. This is from a few weeks ago. I'm doing this on the 25th of March, and that's the current core right now. But we need to download that RBF file and drag it into the console folder on your MiSTer data. You'll see all these different unstable builds for the PlayStation core. All you're going to do is go to where you downloaded it. You're going to select that file, copy it, or you can drag and drop. I just copy, and you're going to paste it in. It's as simple as that to install the core. I've already done it. I'll just hit replace file, but that is how you install a core on MiSTer, and that is how you install the PlayStation 1 unstable nightly core. But remember, the PlayStation 1 used memory cards, and we want to set that up. So on that same GitHub page, you're going to see a download here icon for the memory card file. This is just going to be blank, and we're going to do the same thing we did with the RBF file, except we're going to copy it, and we're going to put it into the PSX directory that we created where we keep that boot.rom file and games themselves, and you will see all those games in the folders right there. But let's talk a little bit more about what we're moving around file wise. I'm just going over to downloads, and let's add Einhander, an amazing shmup, to the MiSTer. You'll see it's in a bin queue. The core also supports CHD, or compressed hunks of data files. I just use bin queue because I prefer it. But all we need to do is make sure that each game's in its own independent folder underneath games and underneath PSX, that folder hierarchy. So you can just paste it right in and wait for it to copy over. Just make sure that all of your games are set up in their own individual folders in the PSX folder, or else they will not work. Now there is a second way to do this. Vampire, I believe that's how you pronounce it, has a script to update the MiSTer as well as the PlayStation core. Now this updates the main core, the MiSTer main, to an unstable version. You may or may not want to do that. It can cause some problems theoretically. Now I've used this and it works perfectly fine. I'm teaching you both ways how to do it here. I recommend, if you're not too comfortable going over to an unstable MiSTer build, just to stick with drag and drop that RBF file. But download his script, copy it into your scripts folder on the MiSTer data, and you can use it from there as well to get to play PlayStation 1 games. Now the only other thing you need to do is make sure your MiSTer is updated. You can use update, you can use downloader, but you want a current installation of the MiSTer main repro. And you'll see here as we open up into the menu, we're going to have a lot of different options here. Some that are very important, some that you probably will never touch, but let's go over some of the basic ones. We have aspect ratio, original, full screen, don't know why you want to stretch it like that, and we have some integer scales. I just leave it as original and original. I think that looks the best for classic 4x3 PlayStation 1 usage on the MiSTer. I always turn dithering off. I do not like dithering, maybe you do, no judgments if you do, but you have the option to turn that on and off as well. And now recently, and I'll do a video on this shortly, or if you've already seen it, not sure how I'm going to structure these, we can do full widescreen on 3D games. It's a little bit buggy, but it works for the most part. Now to launch a game, it's the exact same system as if you've used MiSTer before. Just go ahead and pick the directory that your game is in, and it's going to boot it up. It's as simple as that. You will see the PlayStation 1 splash screen come up on screen. There might be a few graphical glitches, but it has nothing to do with the game whatsoever. And after a few moments, just like an original PlayStation 1, you will be in-game playing. But don't forget, we do want to set up the controller. We need to define all the buttons the first time you use this, or else nothing is going to work inside of the game. So just define whatever controller you want the way that you want it. Obviously I would make right, and left, but if you're so inclined to want to reverse it, go for it. And we can also select a button for save states as well, because we have memory card support, but we also have save state support as well in this core as it currently sits. But define those buttons or else you're going to have a real bad time. And remember that there is a toggle for different type of control pads, analog, mouse, gun con, and otherwise, because not every PlayStation 1 game supports analog, and sometimes you do need to toggle it around. But let's get into gameplay. The sulfur bottom here, I'm pretty sure that's what they called your mom, your sister, or your aunt when she was in high school. All jokes aside, it's definitely a very strange name for a ship. But jumping into Mega Man Legends 2, this core is spectacular. Now this is not a review, it's just a setup guide, but I wanted to show you just a little bit of what's going on here. And this monkey still may be one of the cutest things going on in gaming. But if you followed my directions up until this point, you will be playing games. Now there are some more things that I'm going to go over, but I want you to just take a look at how good this is. I cannot tell the difference between a PlayStation 1 OG versus this core side by side in select games. Everything is controlling well because we've set that control pad up correctly, but I can't say it enough. Just make sure you don't forget to set the control pad up. A lot of the comments I get on these setup guides are, why does it not work? The game launches, but I can't play it. Nothing is working. And 99 out of 100 times, it's because they didn't set that control pad up. But this poor monkey, who would set him on fire? It is just so absolutely sad. I use a Switch Pro controller for my setup. I've also used a DualShock 4. I just love the Switch Pro control in my hands. But if you need that analog control, just make sure you toggle that switch and everything will play as expected. Die, snowman, die. I don't know why, I just felt like kicking that snowman there. But like I showed you earlier with the memory card, if you're going to play something like Mega Man Legends 2, you're going to want to be able to save. And just an einhander here, there is an option to create a save file. And this just shows that the memory card is working, and you can test it out to make sure before you get too far into a game that it is all set up correctly. By default, with the current core that I'm using, and I'm assuming it's going to stay the default, it is going to automatically mount the memory card that you have in your folder. You'll see auto mount memory card 1 is yes. If it says no, make it yes, or else you're going to have to mount it manually. And you can save memory cards as well. And you will see as well, Einhander is a shmup, and save states can be important when you're trying to learn them. We have save states as well, but at the bottom of the menu here, you're going to have all of your different save options. If you want to save the state, you can use Alt and F1 as a default key with the keyboard if you have it plugged in, or you can just select the option and that state is saved. Now everything's working. We've got Einhander saving, we've got it controlling, we've got all of the audio and video things set up the way we need them to. But listen to how good this game sounds, because it is spectacular. I'll come back in about 45 seconds. We'll talk more about how to set up games that need more than one disc, because that is particular. But enjoy. It just sounds so great, and I have Einhander on an original PlayStation 1 disc, and let me tell you, this plays exactly how I would expect it to. But I know we talked about games that have more than one disc, and there is a particular setup for those type of games, both how you structure the folders and files within them, as well as how you actually change discs, and that seems to trip some people up. Some people have asked me questions on how to do it, so I'm going to show you right here and right now. That way I know that if you want to play a multi-disc game, you are fine. So let's just install Metal Gear Solid. If you've got a multi-disc game, what I recommend is create a new folder in your PSX folder and name it to the game that you want. I'm just going to call it Metal Gear Solid. And then, because it comes on two different discs, we're going to have two different sets of bin queue files. We see disk 1 here and disk 2. What I'm going to do is copy disk 1 bin and queue over to the Metal Gear Solid folder that I just created. And then from there, what we're going to do is we're going to copy disk 2 bin and queue into the exact same folder. We want both disks, bins, and queue files in one hierarchical folder. That way that when it looks for the second disk files, it's going to know exactly where they need to be found. So just copy both of them over. It'll take a little bit, but then you'll see here in one folder I've got disk 1 bin in queue and I've got disk 2 bin in queue. This is the only way that it's going to work currently. Maybe it'll change in the future. And I'm not going to play Metal Gear Solid to the point to show you how to actually change a disk. That would take me hours and I don't have it. But you're going to see in the main heads-up display options, there's going to be an option for CD lid open or closed. When it asks you if you need to change disks, you're going to go ahead and open the CD lid, and then you're going to load the other disk file, disk2.q, close the lid, and everything will work perfectly fine. That's how we're going to get multi-disk support in the core. And it's really not that hard, but I know it's going to trip some people up, and I don't want you to get halfway into a game and find out you can't get to disk 2. And if you so want, you can change the region of your system as well. I've got no issues leaving it with NTSCU, but if you want to change it for some reason, you have those options as well. But that is how to get started with the PlayStation 1 core. Install that RBF file, and get your BIOS file renamed to boot.rom, make sure you got a blank memory card file in there, create your PSX folder under games, pop your games over in their own independent folders, and if you got a multi-disc game, make sure the bins and queues for all the discs are in the same folder. But the PlayStation 1 is mature enough that I feel that most of you will succeed if you follow my directions, but if you need any help, leave me a comment down below. I'll have videos on MiSTer next Thursday and throughout the week as well, but the one thing this core does not prevent is me sucking at Metal Gear Solid. See you guys next time. Bye-bye.